Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the virtual open day for the Courtauld Institute's MA in the Conservation of Easel Paintings. My name is Pippa Balch. I'm a senior lecturer in the Conservation Department and the programme lead for our MA in Easel Paintings Conservation. Before we begin, I'd just like to introduce my colleagues on the call. Firstly, Anna, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, yes, my name's Anna, as Pippa said. I work on the admissions team looking at admissions and enrolment. So I'll be talking through the application process for you in a little bit.
Thank you, Anna. And then we also have Katie and Amy. Would you like to introduce yourselves?
Okay. Hi, I'm Katie. I'm a second year student in the easel paintings course here at the Courtauld. I'm originally from the United States, from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and before this, I did a bachelor's in art history.
I'm Amy, also a second year, and I'm from Glasgow, Scotland. And before this, I was doing an MA in fine art at the University of Edinburgh.
Thank you very much. And we'll hear from Katie and Amy in the Q&A and Anna later on in the presentation. So the format for this presentation is that I will spend around 20 minutes to give an overview of our programme, including where we teach and the structure of each year of the three-year course. And then Anna will tell you about the application process. And finally, we hope to have around 20 minutes for a Q&A. So if in the course of this presentation you find you have a question, please do post it in the Q&A section so that we can pick them up at the end. So firstly, the Courtauld Institute's Conservation Department is located at our Somerset House campus on the Strand in London. And you can see an image of Somerset House there on the top, and an image of most of our students on the first day of this academic year, just a few weeks ago. So we have King's College London is right next door, and Courtauld has a partnership with King's College. So in fact, you have access to their facilities. And the National Gallery and the National Portrait Gallery are only 10 minutes walk away up the Strand. The Conservation Centre, the Conservation Department, was refurbished and reopened at Somerset House in 2022. And so most of our teaching for the Easels MA and the MA in Wall Paintings Conservation takes place here in these studios. They're fully equipped studios with specialist spaces, including analytical labs and technical imaging spaces. Somerset House is also home to the Courtauld Gallery, which some of you may know. We regularly take advantage of the gallery for our teaching, and here you can see an image of a seminar taking place in the medieval gallery. And then below you can see a picture of Amy, in fact, who's currently treating a painting from the Courtauld Gallery collection. So conservation students do work directly with paintings from our collection, carrying out treatments as Amy is, or examinations, technical study, or other kinds of research. The Courtauld actually is rather special in that it was conceived from the outset as combining a history of art faculty, the gallery, and the technology department, which makes us one of the very first and pioneering conservation technology departments in the UK. We also have a campus at Vernon Square, King's Cross, and some of the teaching for the MA in Easel Paintings Conservation does take place here. And it's also where the library, student services, the student union, and the research forum are located. To give you a very brief overview of our MA, it's a three-year full-time, highlighted, as you can see, professional education in conservation of easel paintings. We take 6 students per year, which means that we have a very exceptionally high staff-student ratio. We teach in small groups. And we teach over 2 semesters of 12 weeks each, plus assessment periods. The delivery of teaching is a mixture of supervised studio practice, lectures, and workshops. And we have visits as well. Research skills are developed throughout the course, culminating in a dissertation project, which forms a substantial part of the 3rd year. In addition to the semesters, self-directed study and work experience is also undertaken in the summer breaks. I'm often asked about the science content of the course, and so I thought I'd put this slide in. Applied science is integrated throughout the programme, and it's important that scientific principles are understood and applied to the studio work and research that students undertake. But as a first step, reviewing your school level, your high school or secondary school level chemistry would be useful preparation for the course. If your application is successful and you accept a place, you're given access to an online science course, which we've created, which you're required to pass in the summer before teaching begins. So we don't expect you to do specific university level courses in science in preparation for our course. If you have a science degree, that's fantastic. But we do provide this online bespoke course for all offer holders. This online course is made up of 14 topics of the fundamentals of chemistry, requiring about a day each for each topic, depending on how much science you already have, with quizzes after each one that you need to pass. Studio work is a really important preparation for joining the conservation profession, of course. And at the Courtauld, practical conservation is embedded in the programme from a really early stage. Students are handling and working directly with paintings from week one, in fact, from day one, and receive their first paintings to actually treat in week 7 of the first semester. There's very close supervision by experienced tutors in the studios who guide development. And it is in the studios that theoretical knowledge, technical and art historical study of paintings is brought together and applied to practice and decision-making. So the studios are a place where practical, visual and problem-solving skills are all developed, as well as project and time management skills. The students' work is presented verbally and through written documentation, which are assessed at the end of the year. We might be worth me saying a bit about where we source the paintings that students treat from. We source paintings from a variety of places, including museums, country houses, private collectors, and the students often meet the owners to provide updates on the work. We give each student a range of practical projects so they have a good portfolio of treatments to show any future employer. To look in a bit more depth at year one is 50% studio-based learning, so that's 2.5 days per week through the semesters, plus typically 3 or 4 lectures or seminars per week from other modules, which are each 2 hours long. And the modules that are in the first year alongside the studio module is Foundations in History of Art, Introduction to Technical Study in Materials Science, The History of Materials and Techniques, and Principles of Theory and Theory of Conservation 1. Now, that only leaves, if you're doing a calculation, about half or 1 day a week for independent studies. So the course really is very full on, and it is very difficult, for instance, to sustain a job to earn money during the semester teaching weeks. Looking more closely, the module in History of Materials and Techniques with replica making. This is a module in semester 1 and is the first strand of teaching. It involves the study of history of materials and techniques through an 11-week lecture course and a 5-week practical course. So we bring paintings from the gallery collection into the studio, and students study the methods and materials used to produce them and create replicas of some of the techniques. Here, in the top left, you can see an early 16th century Netherlandish panel and its replica, and also this year's first year students making a madder lake pigment in the slide on the picture on the right. You can see the resulting madder pigment below, and an image of examining a picture and of making a burnished water gilded ground. Alongside the History of Materials and Techniques course is the module in Introduction to Technical Study, which spans across semesters 1 and 2. This course is delivered through a series of workshops and lectures which introduce the various techniques we have at our disposal at the Courtauld. So we do have for outstanding facilities for technical study and analysis of painting materials. And in the first year students have a chance to learn how to undertake these techniques and to interpret them. And that is then applied directly to conservation practice and research from the word go. So initially through the replica making course and then in the studios. And this module culminates in students undertaking a full technical study of a painting that we give them, like a mystery painting in semester 2, where they work in pairs to produce this report. And then finally, in the first year, the students receive their first paintings to treat in week 7. And this is also when our module in Principles and Theory begins. And so that Principles and Theory is very much delivered alongside studio practice and the aim is anyway that it keeps up with what's going on in the studio so that the knowledge can be applied directly in the studios. So now moving to year 2. Year 2 actually has a bit more, a higher proportion of studio practice. It's about 70% or 3.5 days per week in the semester periods. And in addition to that, there is a half a day a week or a 2-hour seminar in either preventive conservation and collections care, which is a semester 1 module, or in Principles and Theory of Conservation 2, which is a semester 2 module. So that leaves about a day a week for independent study. And in the second year, students tend to enjoy the practical focus in the second year and certainly develop in confidence and experience in the studio. And as well as aesthetic work, we often carry out structural work such as panel repair and repair to canvas supports such as tear mending or relining. So I've popped in a couple of slides of structural work going on here. The preventive conservation module in semester 1 includes specialist lectures that build on theory introduced in the first year and centres around a case study of a heritage site which they visit. The module culminates in the students working as a team in their year to analyse data, carry out further research and compile a written report with recommendations for environmental control and collections care, which they present to stakeholders. And I did say that I would ask Katie and Amy to jump in at this point to say something about this year's project. So here they are.
Okay. So this year we had the opportunity to work with the National Trust and their property at Dunster Castle in Watermill in Somerset. And so we made the trip. We did a thorough kind of analysis of their preventative conservation methods that they had in place there and are in the process of writing up a report with some recommendations for things that they can implement that would benefit their collections care.
Yeah, there's a lot of collaboration between us and the conservation team there, and also with their own working team, which was great insight for us.
Yeah, we don't often get to kind of step back and look at a collection as a whole, just because there's so much focus in the studios on individual works of art. So that was a cool opportunity.
So it's given you quite good connections, hasn't it, with a real life team looking after a historic property. Yeah.
Yes,
Thanks very much. And finally, in year 2, the final module I'm going to that we have is a module in Principles and Theory 2. So this is building on first year knowledge, and it provides the second year students with lectures in research skills and different research methodologies used in conservation. And it culminates in the students developing and presenting their own research proposals, which they'll then use for their third year dissertation project the following year. And alongside this, so it's a kind of 2-part module. Alongside this, we have a series of lectures which varies each year, which explore emerging research in a specialist area of paintings conservation. So it's looking at more advanced principles and theory and in a particular area of conservation. And the third year students join those lectures. So we teach the 2-year groups together. And typically subjects such as the conservation of modern and contemporary art, or looking in more detail at structural conservation might be typical subjects for that. In year 2, easel painting students are given the option to participate in our Paintings Pairs programme. And I thought I'd mention that partly because we've got some talks coming out relating to this that you might like to book onto. So this is a chance for the postgraduate students from conservation in year 2 to collaborate and partner with postgraduate student from the history of art or curating departments to research a painting which is being treated in the department by our students. So they present their research in 2 talks, one at the end of January, the date's on the slide, and one in early June. And they write up their research as a kind of scholarly essay or article at the end. So we select paintings to give quite a range of objects and likely research questions. And the picture on the right is an example of one of the paintings that was studied last year as part of this programme. So you can go, I've put a link there to the web page for Painting Pairs so that you can find out a bit more about that. But would really encourage you to book on to those 2 presentations to see what we do. And that brings us to year 3 of our programme. So year 3, I've all put on all one slide here, but the dissertation, as we said before, takes up a significant part of the year. And students spend the summer before year 3 doing their literature research, literature survey, and writing their introductions for their dissertations. And then they spend semester 1, weeks 1 to 9, doing the research, gathering their data, interpreting it, and writing a draft. And then after that, they return to the studios, and then finally submit their final, having received feedback on their draft, they submit their final dissertation in January in the assessment period. So students choose quite a wide range of subjects, and they could be things that have been suggested to them or things that they are particularly themselves interested in that they've developed an idea for. And this year, for instance, we've got a few technical studies on very different objects, a medieval object and a large 20th century Stanley Spencer painting. And then we have a project looking at greener materials for conservation, in this case, greener materials for the varnish removal from paintings. So it's quite wide-ranging projects. And then once they're back and then, oh yes, I should say, I've put a slide in here to remind me to say that the Jerry Headley Student Symposium is an annual event that the third years from the 3 UK-based postgraduate programs in paintings conservation. They present at this symposium. And that's something else that you could actually book a ticket for. It's usually in early June. Then alongside the dissertation, these third year students return to the studios in week 10. And then from then on, they spend 3.5 days a week in the studio, like the second years. And they have in semester 2 a module, Principles and Theory of Conservation 3. Now, some of those lectures they join with the second years to participate in the lectures on the special topic. But apart from that, the third years have their own series of lectures looking at dissemination and publication of research. So this year, they're going to be thinking about, summarizing research and presenting it, and doing some media training actually on presenting research. And that part of the module culminates in the third years doing a presentation and also preparing a research poster or doing a video piece on their dissertation research. So alongside this, we have a series of professional context visits in the year 2. At the end of after semester 2, we run a series of visits to conservation studios in and around London. This is to provide to museums and to private studios and to quite a range of places. This is to give the students some professional contacts context, and also to provide them with contacts, actually, and to start envisaging themselves in the workplace and where they might like to work. And then, perhaps more excitingly, in the reading week in semester 2, so in February, second and third years are accompanied by tutors on a study trip to a centre of excellence in conservation, which is usually outside the UK. And that is always a really nice week. We spend 3 whole days of visits, and this is a subsidised trip. I'm often asked about assessment, and so I thought I'd put this slide in just to say that there are quite a range of assessment methods that we use. So there's kind of something for everyone. If you don't shine at one thing, you can probably shine at another, which we think is a healthy attitude, since our students come from quite a variety of backgrounds, educational backgrounds, I should say. So we have assessments in reflective writing, small, short pieces of reflective writing, in presentations, both group presentations and individual. There are essays in the first year and a dissertation in the third year. Conservation documentation and technical reports are assessed. And finally, the studio supervisors provide a report based on continuous assessment throughout the year in the studio. And then I've also listed here, you can go back to this slide later, I've just listed the weighting of the various modules that go into the final degree. Just a quick slide to say that we're a very close-knit community in the conservation department, and we have end of term parties organised by the students with themes, and we do have a small breakout tea room at Somerset House that the students can use for lunch and coffee and tea breaks. And but outside the conservation department, our students also can and do get involved with the student union, which is based at Vernon Square, and they so participate in wider Courtauld activities and events. Our students are really successful in finding employment on graduation in quite a wide range of places. So graduates of our course are prepared for a professional career or further study in the field of paintings conservation. So I've listed some examples of the kind of work that you might be qualified to enter into here. And our MA is also, we feel, are also equip students with highly transferable skills, and I've listed some of those here. But it's a very varied course with lots of aspects to it, so there are lots of skills are developed throughout. So that comes to the ends of the slides that I wanted to present on our course. Please do pop any questions you have on that material into the Q&A as we hear from Anna on the application process. I'll now pass over to Anna.
That's great. Thank you, Pippa. So as mentioned before, my name's Anna. I'm the Admissions and Enrolment Officer at the Courtauld in the admissions team. So I'm just going to talk you through the steps of the application process and go into some detail on the documents that are kind of required. So to start with, the application deadline. Applications are now open, so you can apply kind of from now onwards. The deadline is the 12th of January, and that kind of lines up with our scholarship deadline as well. So really key to kind of get that application in. There are a number of steps that come after the application process if you're successful at that stage. So I will go into that in a little bit more detail later. But if I could get the next slide, Pippa, that would be great. Thank you. Okay, so our entry requirements. So starting with UK qualifications, so that could be UK students or students who have studied in the UK kind of for their bachelor's degree. Typically, successful students will have a good 2-1 in their bachelor's degree in a subject that is usually either fine art, history of art, or in the natural sciences. As it says there, we do welcome applicants with different kinds of backgrounds, either academic backgrounds or professional experience, but that is typically kind of what we see in successful candidates. If you're coming from overseas, so if you're from outside of the UK, you've done a degree outside of the UK, we're looking for kind of an equivalent degree. So to that Good 2-1 from a UK university. An example we have there is for US applicants, because we do see quite a lot of US applicants. That would be looking at a GPA of around 3.3. But we do have a great website called International Entry Requirements, which goes into a bit more detail on different countries and their kind of typical equivalencies. So I'd really recommend having a look there for your particular country. And then if you have any questions, you can get in touch with our international team, which is just international@courtauld.ac.uk, and they'll be happy to help with any questions that you have. And then in terms of our other requirement, which is English language, so if English is not your first language, we do need to receive some evidence kind of that you meet the requirements. The tests, they're called secure English language tests that we currently accept, are IELTS and Cambridge. But do please have a look on our English language requirements page, as that goes into a little bit more detail on the scores that we require and some other various ways that you can meet that requirement if you don't have kind of one of those two tests. But yeah, if we could go to the next slide, that'd be great. Thank you. So getting more into the actual documents that you'll need to submit when you come to apply, starting with the personal statement. So you'll need to submit a 600-word general personal statement, and this sort of allows you to talk about why you want to apply for the course. So in particular, you can talk about why you'd like to study at the Courtauld on this particular conservation programme, any relevant study or projects, or maybe your BA dissertation if that was relevant, or any work experience that you have that makes you a good fit. Any interests or relevant key skills that you have, again, that make you a good fit, why you in particular stand out as a candidate, and then also any career aspirations that you might have in the field. As it says there, it's not prescriptive. You don't have to kind of stick to it point by point, but it should give you kind of a good framework to build a strong statement from. Yeah. Thank you. So in particular for Easels, there's an additional step in the application process where you'll need to answer 4 questions, and these relate to your kind of knowledge and your experience for this particular programme in conservation and fine art. So each question is 400 words, or that's the word limit, and the questions are on the screen there. So why you're interested in conservation of paintings, what your background reading might be in the topic, whether you're kind of what your main field that you've come from, art history, fine art, studio art or science, and your interest and experience in the area, or even, like it says there, in areas that are not your main field. If you've seen any conservation work in progress, and then kind of what sort of thing you're most interested in. Those are kind of the main areas. But yeah, we could go to the next one. Thank you. You'll also need to submit a written work sample from previous academic work that you have completed. Preferably, this would be from your BA dissertation, so just a chapter, and the word limit is 3,000 to 5,000 words. If you maybe haven't done your dissertation yet, you haven't completed it, or maybe you did it quite a long time ago, then you are able to submit an essay of suitable length instead, or you could submit 2 essays that combined kind of still are below the word limit. If you are submitting kind of an essay or a chapter, please do just give us some context on what we're looking at there, because that helps our reviewers kind of know what the context of the piece. If you haven't been in academia for a very long time, or kind of your subject is not at all linked or kind of combined, you can write a piece from scratch kind of within those limitations, but we would really recommend trying to look for any essay or kind of part of your dissertation if you do have that available. That's great. If you go to the next slide. That's great, thank you. So in terms of your academic transcripts, really important, we do need your official transcripts from all your previous degrees, and an interim transcript if you're currently completing your BA or kind of another degree. So what we're really looking for on that is your overall final grade if you have completed it. that's kind of a key piece of information there to kind of assess you against our entry requirements, but also more detail about sort of the modules you've done and the topics that you've covered in your program. We do require electronic copies, so that could be either directly from your university or a scan of a final hard copy if you were only issued hard copies. If your degree was not in English, which is very common, then you will need to provide an English translation, a certified English translation. So that's just something to think about when coming to apply, because you might need to sort of request that in advance. Yeah, that's great. Thank you. So now I'm going to talk about references. So ideally, we would be looking for 2 academic references. And if one could be from your BA dissertation supervisor, that would be really great. That's not always possible. Again, if you have been out of academic kind of study for a very long time, and if that is the case, then we can accept professional references. In addition, you might have work experience in the area of conservation. So you might think, 1 academic reference and 1 professional reference might be make your application kind of strong, but we are really looking for at least 1 academic reference, if not 2, if possible, because what we're looking for in those from your referees is sort of for them to speak to your academic ability, your kind of potential to learn, that sort of thing. So it is something to really strive for if you can get that academic reference. When you submit your application, you will need to include all of your referee's details, and when you kind of hit submit, it will send an automatic email to your referee to request the references. From that point onwards, though, we won't kind of chase them, so you will need to make sure that you have been in contact with them to let them know that you're going to nominate them, so that they have time to prepare a reference, and also just so they're aware of the deadline for the application and all that sort of thing, so they can get it in good time, and they have time to prepare it for you. Yeah, if we could go to the next slide, that would be great. Thank you. So just a couple of last things about the actual application itself. We do need a copy of all your passports, if you just have one or if you have multiple, even if you're a UK student. If it could be clear scans, that would be great, just so we have all the details legible, and we don't need to kind of come back to you for anything else. Also, you'll need to include your CV. And this is really good for, if you haven't been able to notify us of anything in your personal statement, but you want to make sure it's included, that's where a CV can really be helpful. So if you could include the dates that you've completed any employment or kind of academic study and the locations as well, that also just gives a bit more context. Sometimes people miss that out, so I like to highlight it. That would be great. And then if you have any previous UK visas, say you've done bachelor's studies in the UK before, please do include a scan of those as well. That's really helpful for us when it comes to thinking about your visa for studying with us. But there is a website called Postgraduate Application Guidance and FAQs that's really helpful, goes through step by step on each document that's required. So I'd really recommend taking a look there. And then if you had any other questions, just contacting us directly at pgadmissions@courtauld.ac.uk, and we can always answer any kind of outstanding questions that you have. Yeah, that's great. If we could go to the next slide, just a couple more points to cover. So this is another kind of unique feature of the applying for conservation of easel paintings. There are a few more steps to the application process. If you're successful at the initial application stage, you'll be invited to interview. And as it says there, the interviews will be held online between the 16th and the 26th of February. But prior to that interview, there are a few things that interviewees will be asked to complete first. And that includes a practical test, assessing your manual dexterity and colour matching. And then to complete an online slide test to assess your observational skills. And then you will need to submit a portfolio. So this might be something to start thinking about now in terms of what you might submit. But it's 3 to 5 artworks that you've made in order to demonstrate your manual dexterity and some aptitude for the artistic practice. And then lastly, a colour blindness test that is online because all students will need to have normal colour vision. So then If you're successful at those stages, so the applicant, the test, and the interview stage, and you're successful in securing an offer, you will then need to complete that online course in Science Fundamentals that Pippa went through a little bit earlier in the talk. So it's just some things to be aware of, especially for Easels. But if we could go on to the next stage, great. So this is just to talk briefly about the scholarship and funding available. So as I mentioned earlier, the deadline for the Courtauld linked MA kind of postgraduate funding is the same as the application deadline. So that's the 12th of January. And there's a few different scholarships available on the website that are relevant to conservation students, starting with the New Voices MA scholarship. So this is open to all of our master's programs. It's up to 6 MA scholarships of £15,500. And it's assessed on widening participation criteria. So those criteria are all outlined on the website, goes into quite a lot of detail on kind of how you are eligible for that. So I'd really recommend taking a look at that. The second group of scholarships is the Courtauld Postgraduate Studies scholarships. So those ones are a little bit more varied. So we have lots of kind of generous donors, and some of those will have pots of funding that are for specific scholarships. So it might be for a particular program or a particular area of study, or even a particular nationality that the applicant comes from. So it's worth just having a really thorough look on the website and seeing if you might be eligible for any of those. The New Voices and the Postgraduate Study Scholarship has the same application form on the website, so you just tick the ones that you're eligible for. And then thirdly, there is the scholarship specific to conservation programs. So this has a separate form, which I believe is not currently live yet, but should be live very quickly. It's just going through some additional checks. But those will be relevant to individual conservation programs. So there are some for easels and some for walls. And again, it's just worth having a look there at the different things that are available. On the form for that, again, you'll be able to indicate which ones you believe you're eligible for. And then lastly, just a couple of things to make sure that you're aware of are the UK and US loans. We've got some information on the website. That is a case of applying directly with the relevant government, but if you just wanted some more information, we do have that on our website. And then the alumni loyalty scheme. So anyone here who might have done a BA with us or a previous postgraduate course, there is a 10% alumni loyalty scheme, which is automatically applied when you start. It's just worth being aware of. As I've mentioned a bit, there is a website with all of our scholarship information on it called Postgraduate Funding and Scholarships. So do take a look there for a bit more information. Lastly, I just want to highlight that we appreciate it's a bit of a tricky environment currently for funding, especially for postgraduate masters students. So it is worth doing your own research and just looking really widely, because funding can be limited, and a lot of students, master students, will need to use different funding sources to cover all the various costs of studying, even if they are successful in securing a scholarship. So it's just worth keeping that in mind. But yeah, Pippa, if we could go to the next slide, that'd be great. Thank you. Brilliant. So accommodation. So accommodation is live. The applications are live from February, as it says there. There's actually additional accommodation that's not on that list, but there's 3 in total: Duchy House, Intercollegiate Halls of Residence, and there is a third one which is in Canary Wharf, I believe. It's worth having a look on the website because each of them have different contract lengths. So the 2 that are on the website there are open a 12-month long kind of contracts, and then the last one, the Canary Wharf one, I believe is just open for 9-month contract, kind of typically for our 9-month programs. So it's worth having a look at the website and seeing which ones you think would fit your needs, and then reaching out to our accommodation team at the email there, which is hallapplications2627@courtauld.ac.uk, if you have any questions about that, or want to kind of discuss what might be the right fit for you if you want to apply. Again, with similar to the scholarships kind of topic, we do recommend that our postgraduate master's students look widely for accommodation. So do your own research and sort of external options as well, to kind of give yourself as broad a view of the different options as possible. But yeah, that's great. That's kind of everything from me. So I might hand back to Pippa for the Q&A section, if that's okay. But I'm here to answer any questions that might be relevant to me as well. Thanks.
That's brilliant. Thank you very much, Anna. So I'm going to stop sharing now. Thank you very much. And I've got a few questions already in the Q&A. So I'll stop sharing that screen. And has that worked all right? Has it stopped sharing? Great. Okay. And then I'll just pull up the questions and we can go through them. And we can work out who's most qualified to answer. Okay, great. So we've got several questions about the application process and one or two. The first one, so I'm going to read the questions out. Why is this course longer compared to other similar courses offered by UK universities? And does the dissertation need to be related to studio practice, or could it be focused on more academic topics like art history? Okay, I'll take the first question first. In fact, there are 3 comparable courses in the UK, postgraduate courses for paintings conservation. And of those, the one that's most comparable to ours is probably the Hamilton Carr Institute in Cambridge. And that actually is also a 3-year programme. The University of Northumbria course is the 3rd course. And that... well, actually, that's a good question. It's 2 years long, but it may have longer terms, and I can't remember. It used to, but I can't remember whether it's now. Do you know, Katie and Amy? Or is it now semesters as well?
It's now in semesters too, so it's just 2 academic years.
Okay. So that course is shorter. I mean, we feel very strongly that 3 years is really the minimum required to get the kind of practical skills and the theoretical knowledge required for conservation. But what do Katie and Amy think? I mean, I think you always feel there isn't enough time to learn as much as you want to learn. Is that right?
3 years sounds like a lot, but I mean, because it is kind of like a technical and an academic degree at the same time, there's never enough time.
You're crunching so much into those 3 years that it makes it A, go by very quickly, and B, you'll wish there was a little bit more time to get your head around things.
So it is certainly a very long, it's a long time for an MA. That is definitely true. So it's a rather unusual course. And you could argue perhaps that there wasn't something that was more appropriate than MA for it, but MA isn't quite, it's not normal to have a 3-year MA. So, but it needs to be 3 years to give the professional education that we want to give. And the dissertation, no, it absolutely does not need to be about studio practice. So we have quite a range of dissertation topics, and some of them are very theoretical and philosophical. Yes, art history. So it really is. It's up to the students to develop a proposal that is going to work and be achievable in the time that there is. So I hope that answers that one. Someone else has said that their bachelor's degree is not in fine art or art history, and will the academic references be equally valid? And Anna, I think you'll agree, yes, they will. It doesn't matter which degree you have.
Yeah.
And So,
just
yes, absolutely.
Sorry, Pippa. Sorry, no, I was going to agree with you. It's just make sure that they can speak to your kind of academic ability rather than necessarily your experience in the topic. That's completely fine. Yeah.
And I certainly would agree that certainly academic reference is really important. However, if you are someone that's been away from your, have worked at something else or something relevant for a number of years since your degree, I think that then it would be appropriate, if you've been working in conservation or a conservation related job, then it would be appropriate for one of the references to be from that employer, if you've had a number of years since your degree. So that's also fine. I think you need to use a judgment on that, but it is important to us that you have at least one academic reference. There's another question here for someone who holds a global talent visa for the UK. This is one for Anna, I think. Would they be paying UK or international tuition fees?
I would say I would recommend getting in touch with our international team. I mentioned earlier the international at courtauld.ac.uk. What I can say generally is typically your tuition fee kind of qualification, whether it's home or overseas, it's not necessarily based just on your visa or kind of previous visa or anything like that. We look at a range of things, including your residency history, as well as things like nationality. So it's not something that's super easy to answer simply. It's usually kind of quite circumstantial. So yeah, I'd recommend getting in touch with our international team and just provide as much detail about your circumstances as possible. And you can have a discussion about that might be just a little bit more helpful and more kind of specified. If that's okay.
Okay. We have another question of what we expect to see in an applicant's treatment portfolio in their application. I need to just say two things there. Firstly, that the portfolio, it can include a treatment if you've done some conservation work, but really what we're asking for is just some examples of artworks that you've made yourselves. So clearly, if you've got a science degree or you haven't studied fine art, your portfolio will be at a different level to someone who has. But that doesn't matter. We just need to see, obviously, in practical conservation, you will be required to do some retouching, and you need to have some aptitude for that kind of detailed work. So, that kind of artistic work. So the tests and additional things that we ask for, if you're invited, only if you're invited for interview, I should stress. So those who are shortlisted for interview in January will be asked to provide these extra materials. And the practical tests and the portfolio are designed to give us a sense of your manual dexterity and your aptitude for artistic practice. So I don't know whether Katie and Amy have got anything to add. Did you worry about your portfolio when you produced it?
Oh, because I came from a fine art background, I submitted paintings that I'd worked on, but I know between at least the six of us, we had quite a mix of different
Yeah, I
things.
didn't have really any technical technical fine art education, but that isn't necessarily important. It's all about I guess, yeah, just how you're able to handle art making materials, that kind of thing. It's not like it's required for you to have a background in fine art.
Yeah. I mean, you could go out, this afternoon and make a sketch of something or do something with your hands for that. I mean, it can be as simple as that. And we have actually had examples of non-2D art as well. So, I mean, you could think about what's most appropriate from the things that you can come up with. We have another question about referees here, Anna. In regards to academic referees, will the referee only be able to submit their reference once the applicant has fully completed their application? Does this mean that references can be submitted after the January the 12th, or should they submit it by January the 12th? Well, yeah. Ideally, I mean, I want to say something here as well. We are a bit unusual because we have the interviews that online, and we have all the various materials that we need you to do before the interviews. What we do is when you're invited for interview, we give you access to a kind of portal which has a platform which has all these places to submit these different bits of material, and we want you to have time to do that. So we need to make our shortlisting decisions really, really soon after the 12th of January deadline. So it is much, much better if applications are not done last minute, and therefore there is a bit of time for references to come in so that we have more complete applications to read from the 12th of January. So that's all I would say. But officially, Anna, yes, they can come in after the 12th. Is that right?
Yes. No, I want to agree with everything that Pippa said, but just talking in terms of the actual administration of it. So if you submit your application on the 12th, for example, typically the way that we would treat it is that your references don't have to be in straight away. But if they're not in within kind of 5 working days is typically the time period, then we would still submit your application to review without them. And that can obviously it's a big piece of your application that's missing. So that's where it comes into talking to your referees prior to applying. That's where it becomes really important. We do recommend about 4 to 6 weeks ahead of submitting your application. But that's kind of the more actual administration process of it. But as Pippa says, if you can get talk to your referees and ask them to submit and be prepared to submit around the same time that you submit your application, because when you kind of hit submit on your application, that sends them out the email. And if they're kind of ready and waiting for it and they can submit as soon as possible, that's the ideal situation. But it's not kind of it's
You're
not an
not ruled
immediate
out.
cut-off. Yes, exactly.
Yeah, you're
as
not
you say.
exactly. You're not ruled
Yeah.
out. Someone's asked about the practical test. Is it a mysterious? Well, yeah, no, we don't tell you in advance what it is. You can't really do anything to prepare for it. It's designed to help us assess your manual dexterity and your color matching. So you can take those hints as you like. But they're simple tests. We ask you to take photographs of them and also post them, mail them back to us. That's what we ask you to do. As to the artwork we submit after the first stage, does it need to be oil on canvas? So I've kind of answered that in a similar one. You're not submitting the artworks themselves. What you're doing is submitting photographs of artworks, and it can be, I would say, in any media. You can think yourselves of the relevance of the various material that you've got to choose from. So they're photographs that we're working from, not the actual artworks themselves. Someone has asked about the undergrad degree, and yes, non-art history, fine art, and science. We don't rule you out completely. And this particular individual has said that their degree is. They've asked about degrees in archaeology and ancient history, and yes, it would be you would be eligible to apply, certainly. As you are, I mean, we currently have a graduate who studied maths, and we've had graduates of archaeology and ancient history. We've had graduates of English literature as well. So we don't rule people out. We look at the applications quite holistically, actually. Oh, a question directly for Katie and Amy. That's nice. How have your previous educations informed your studies in the program?
Yeah, sure. So because I did both art history and then studio-based painting, my studio practice itself, I was really personally interested in like medieval painting techniques and looking at the likes of Gino Cennini and how he created his layers. So I was doing a lot of that in the background, which as I came into first year really informed how I was looking at the panels that we were working on for the replica course, or also just the way that an artwork is put together, and being able to like distinguish those layers through like a microscope was really beneficial. And then for art history, it was much more general. So it was nice to be able to kind of get a touch on different areas of history and how materials evolved over time, which then helps me in studio where I'm able to sort of distinguish different techniques and practices. And yeah, kind of understand their makeup a bit more. So I would say that's definitely how that benefited me.
Yeah, I did art history as well. And I think just like learning research skills too, how to like access archives and go through like finding information, primary sources, that was really important. Like how to synthesize, your argument or the writing that you're doing. A lot of that's very applicable. So like the treatment reports that we do and kind of the ethical discussions around certain types of treatments or what road to go down. So I found that helpful. I took a few chemistry classes as well. I didn't get a degree in it, but I think that also helped prepare for kind of like some of the chemistry that we do and the science that we do, just kind of learning respect for some of the materials that we work with, which can be kind of hazardous if they're not handled properly. So yeah, I think that those were kind of the most applicable parts of my undergrad, I would say.
Thank you. I'm going to try and group a few questions together, I think. So first of all, there are a few questions about kind of general experience and how to prepare pre-course experience and how to prepare for application. I would say we don't expect people to have experience in conservation to start with. However, we would very much hope that anyone applying who wants to be treated, who wants to be taken seriously, will have found out about conservation. So it's really important to us that people who are applying know what they're letting themselves in for as far as they can. That could be through reading, through finding a way to see conservation in firsthand. Or it could be, if you're lucky, and I think if you're in North America, actually there's quite an established program of pre-course experience. So we find that people who come from North America often have some pre-program experience, but you're not at a disadvantage if you apply without that. But we do want to see that you have.
Pippa, I think you've muted maybe.
I'm so sorry, you probably didn't hear any of that. Oh, rats. That's so annoying. What was I even talking about? How much did you hear? None of that at all? No.
You just lost a couple of minutes there, just
Okay.
a little bit.
I was talking about pre-course preparation, wasn't I?
Yeah.
Did you get the bit about about work experience?
Yes, kind of up to you saying that it's not a disadvantage.
Okay, fine.
Yeah.
The other thing that some people have asked for is whether there are any courses they could take, educational courses prior to the program. And what I would say there is that there might well be things that you would find useful to satisfy yourself that you've got the aptitude or the interest in science or in fine art. So you could take life drawing classes, but what I would advise against is spending a lot of money on those things, because you are going to need every penny to come to study here for 3 years on this full-time course. So I wouldn't think beyond the application itself. So if you've we try for, so I would recommend you review your school science yourself. Look, buy a textbook for GCSE or A-level chemistry. Review that. Don't spend a lot of money on a science course. Think beyond that, because you probably are going to need to save money to come. So that's what I would say. Someone's asked how many applicants we get. We get a large number of applicants. It varies quite a bit, but between 40 and 60, say, applicants. Well, I suppose that isn't that huge, but for 6 places, and often the applicants are quite focused and well qualified. So it is a difficult decision to get that down to the 18 that we interview, I must say. Let me just scan. Multiple applications, Anna. You can make multiple applications. They're separate applications. That's correct, isn't it?
Yes, that's right. There's a slight system issue currently with that, but it's being looked into, but it is theoretically possible. So yeah, just keep an eye out, and that should be possible soon. But that is how we're kind of treating things this year. You'll need to submit, when you submit your application, your first application, you need to pick one program, and it's only really open for those who are really kind of desperate to submit to. The system is kind of designed this year for sort of a one program focus, but if you really want to, that will be possible. Yeah.
I mean, I would say that if you're interested in wall paintings conservation as well, for instance, then it's fine to apply for both. But just think about which suits you. It's kind of lifestyle choice, really, that one, because you have to go to the wall paintings and they don't come to you on the easel. There are 2 questions about deferring applications. I'm afraid you cannot defer. If you are offered a place, you cannot defer it, and I'm sorry about that, but we will consider you again in the next round if you reapply. So that's not possible. Someone else has asked, this is a good question. If you're accepted for a scholarship, would you receive this for the full 3-year course, or would you have to reapply? And the answer is, Anna, if I'm right, you do have to reapply, but you're very likely to receive a similar amount for the following 2 years if you're successful in the first year. Can we say that? You're muted, Anna.
Sorry, yeah. I was going to say that it slightly depends on which scholarship. There's quite a lot of scholarships, or different types of scholarships, and some of them are reoccurring and some of them are not. So it's worth just double checking. They should have the information on the website on if they are, if they're not. And if you have a question about a particular one, please do just reach out to the PG admissions team. But yeah, it slightly depends, unfortunately. So there's not one kind of answer. Some of them are recurring, like Pippa mentioned, but some of them aren't.
Yeah, thank you. And we have, I think I've answered most of the questions I've got. The main motivations are someone who has thought about this really hard and understands what conservation is and has prepared as much as they can for the commitment that it really is for 3 years. We can't really afford to make mistakes. We really don't want to say yes to someone who is surprised. That's why this has been quite detailed, because I really want to try and paint a really good picture of what it's really like on the course, so that no one arrives and it's not what they were expecting and not what they wanted. And then finally, someone has asked about the range of artworks we treat, and this is a great question. What's the range of artworks students work with from the school's private collection and neighbouring museums? Are they all of Western descent? What if a student would like to specialise in Asian works? Would that be available along with tutors who specialise in it? So what I would say about that is that we, in the Easel Paintings Conservation Department, we do not currently have specialists in Asian art. And the other thing to say is that but that doesn't mean that we wouldn't consider paintings on canvas or panel or metal supports that have Asian origins. And we are occasionally offered such works to treat, and then we consider them alongside everyone else, but everything else. But it's not a current specialism on the course. But we do have a quite big range of objects and paintings that we do treat on the course. So there's a big range, but we're not specialists in Asian art, no. And is the cost of the course, I'm afraid to say, yes, so the fees listed on the website are per year. Yeah. So it's a big consideration, the cost of the course. And not forgetting that you will also be living in London, which is expensive. And I don't know whether Katie and Amy have anything to add on that. I mean, Katie and Amy actually both started, they were living in the Duchy House accommodation in their first year.
Yeah, London's definitely expensive. The Duchy House, if you are, I think they do prefer international. I think
international students do have first preference if you apply to Duchy House.
Yeah.
And there are, I think, at least when we were living there were 9-month contracts there as well.
Yeah.
So that's what we did. And location wise, it's incredible. I mean, it's like right around the corner. So
cutting a lot on travel costs, which is
helpful.
Nice and a good consideration.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying to think
I think a lot of us do live kind of farther away and kind of commute in. Like, we're no longer in student accommodation, and I think that's pretty normal to travel, I don't know, 40 minutes by bus or on the tube. But London's transport systems are really efficient, clean, safe, at least compared to the US, which we're used to. But that's kind of what we found.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it might also be worth mentioning that there are opportunities within the Courtauld for some of at least a couple of students from our year working in the research forum as well. So you're kind of in that network and able to make a little bit of money with the little amount of time that we have. That's free.
And most students are able to earn money in the long holidays, so especially the summer holiday. Although that's a bit of a dilemma, because you also want to find work experience, which is often either very low paid or not paid at all. So it is tough, isn't it? There's no two ways about it. Yeah. It is definitely a consideration. There's one more question come in, and then I think we must call it a day, which is that someone has asked about the ratio of UK and international students enrolled per year. And I would say that we don't have a hard and fast rule on this. We give places to the top 6. Irrespective of where they come from. However, it normally does work out at roughly half and half international and home students, but it varies a bit from year to year. I can't remember what your year might be a bit more. You've got more overseas, actually, your year, haven't you?
I think
if we count Paige.
Because Paige is technically now UK resident. So
yes, true. Yeah, but it's roughly half and half, isn't it? Yeah, of course. So thank you so much, everyone. Thank you for all those great questions, and nice that so many of you came on the day. And just a reminder, you will be given the recording of this, and so you can watch again. For those of you tuning in for the first time as a recording, do feel free to follow up with any questions that you may have to either the admissions department, which is Anna's department, or you can email, and in fact they can funnel your questions to whoever's most relevant. That's probably the easiest way to do it, but I can also be contacted. So thank you very much, and goodbye.